Hello and welcome to another video. So we're still taking a look at the Grand Prix decks. This is a Forestcraft. We're actually going to look at all the decks for every single class over the whole week, excluding Portal, just because one, I wanted this to just be a week-long thing, so 7 days, so I only really wanted to do 7 classes. Plus, Portalcraft's deck is the same in both rotation and unlimited, regardless of how you play it, so really there's no big difference to that deck overall, so I didn't see the point on covering it. But today's video is Forest. This is a Roach Forest deck. Can definitely be OTK, but I tend to find that it worked best just going with the normal Roach stuff. I didn't actually get to use Forest Archaeon, which as a single card, of course, makes it harder to use, plus it was quite a high drop. But it's not that bad either. All enemy followers in play lose the ability to attack next turn. If at least 2 other cards will play this turn, not too bad if you want to protect yourself, which is pretty good. So we're going to get right into it and check this deck out. So our first game is against Rune. I struggled with this deck a little bit to begin with, but got the hang of it. Of course, there are misplays. There was even a few that I noticed straight after playing some cards that definitely would have made these matches easier overall, but ended up in the same line of play anyway, and got the end result being a win. So that's what I was really aiming for. It's just one of those things where it's very easy to miss a play, especially a line of play when you're comboing 5 to 6 cards per turn and not in any kind of linear order, usually a very wonky one, so it's not too surprising. But we get a pretty decent hand starting this match off. I mean, turn 1 and turn 2 play, both that will produce more cards for our hand, is always a good thing. We already have a Roach, we have a Goblin Mage, and we've got a couple of Bouncers, so it's always a good start when you end up with all those cards. So playing a Goblin Mage on 3 just allows us to really put some more pressure down and draw a Roach from our deck. Really a good way to play that card when you don't have much else to play. Didn't want to overstack my hand with the Fairy Circle yet, so kind of avoid trying to play that, especially when I knew I was going to be getting this Fairy Wisp and a draw off the top. Magical Fairy Lilac, almost perfect draw. Does let us get a couple more damage in, which will be great. The Glow does end up returning a Fairy, not the biggest loss. And of course Owl, being able to pretty comfortably remove this 2-2. Of course they're not going to attack into Lilac because that would be absolute waste. For me though, going for a massive amount of damage this turn is probably a priority. Of course, I really need the evolve on this Fina, so at least I can remove their Owl, but I get at least 1 damage on them. And now we have a couple of cards, a couple of returns, and a pretty decent setup. So all we need to really do now is get just that icing on top. Of course, I don't know if I could have won a little earlier with this. I probably could have, but I don't tend to like to take too many risks until I adjust to a deck, and Forest just isn't one of the classes that I'm accustomed to playing a lot. So unless you do play a lot of Forest, sometimes it will be harder to notice those lethals that may be in an earlier line of play. Don't mind burning that to prioritize getting these. I do decide to just make the push now, especially since I know I'm going to have the 3 Roach set up. So pushing as much damage as I can and freeing up some of my hand space at the same time does let me get some good damage in. Plus, the likelihood of Rune having any kind of decent healing is basically 0, meaning that these Roaches are guaranteed to do some crazy damage. The only real risk now is the fact that they may be able to play a ward, in which case I could be screwed, but I was willing to take that risk.
Not here.
Especially considering the best they could do really is play a single ward card. I mean, they could have come up with some crazy combo to get wards, but I don't think it would have been enough anyway. Plus, we have Airbound Barrage, 2 Roaches, and plenty of fodder, which, just a little bit of thinking, does allow us to go for lethal over this 1 ward. I mean, it's not a crazy amount of difficulty, it's just a matter of making sure things are ordered in the right way, that you can easily deal with this. So I decided to just throw 1 Roach. I still only need 1 anyway. Fairy plus Airbound does end up being able to remove this quite comfortably, and another Roach is pretty comfortably set up. I probably could have done that again just a little better if I thought about it a little bit, but I got the lethal either way for the same turn. Maybe a little convoluted, but it worked out. So next up, Saber Altar for Shadow. Shadow can be a nuisance because they can go very hard, very fast with things like Atomy, and when that's dealing damage to you, you can be in some real trouble. So I end up dropping all of this hand just because I really didn't feel like that hand was going to help much in this matchup. Although Lilac could have been pretty decent, I just really wasn't sure what to go for. So I thought better off throwing everything, looking for cards that I know could be of some use in the early game, over just kind of hoping that that would work. And this actually didn't do too bad. I didn't play the Flower of Fairies because I actually wanted to get H and Elf out on turn 3 on curve with a decent buff to it, and that will also allow me to get the Will of the Forest to have some good value if I can bounce both of these back. And the odds of Shadow being able to deal with this in a single turn now was reasonably low, so not really any kind of major problem. But I can at least deal with these pretty well. I mean, we get a couple of damage out of these fairies, isn't normally too bad anyway. Of course, we did end up dealing with that follower just because I don't want my H and Elf to die straight away. Lurching Corpse did make it a little more difficult, but overall wasn't too bad, and we ended up getting the value on turn 4 anyway. So now that they've pretty much gone wide here, they're definitely going to be looking to get rid of this H and Elf so they don't take any more damage, which I think is the smart play to make. It's definitely the play I would have made going with Shadow. But they've easily got an Atomy set up if they want it. I mean, they can't really do much just because those amulets really screw me. Hard to remove them other than just waiting them out. So they're guaranteed to have a possible Atomy next turn as long as they have it in hand. But we don't go too bad. We do have our Roach now, which gives us some options. We get double Flower of Fairies, so with those, we at least have a shot. And we have Will of the Forest, which on at least an 8-card draw means we should be able to deal 7 damage next turn if we need to. While that's not enough to deal with Atomy, at least it gives us a shot at removing something big here if we decide to go down that path. So this turn I was a little upset about, mainly because I accidentally misclicked on my summon. I ended up getting this fairy out. I then went to evolve, accidentally slipped a little bit with my movement. I was playing on mobile at the time while I was watching some TV to do these games, but I slipped onto that, accidentally ended up hitting the fairy and didn't get what I wanted. So I was a little disappointed. But to say the least, I mean, it could have been worse. We're still going to have a pretty decent hand next turn. And that's if they don't remove this 3-3. If they don't, we actually end up with a basically pretty easy lethal. Although, as we're going through it, I'll definitely explain why I could have done better. So we get these Flower Fairies, which does stock our hand up quite comfortably. I decide to start dumping my Fairy Wisps, which is fine. That was good. I actually should have played the Evolve here. If I had evolved the 3-3 and then played another Wisp instead of playing Roach first, I wouldn't have had to be worrying about my lethal because I would have been well and truly over it. I didn't unfortunately think about that until after I'd already gone and played my Roach, so unfortunately I did just scrape through a lethal with that Evo there, but it just wasn't quite as good as I'd hoped it would be. If I had have thought about it just that little bit more, I would have thought that through and had that Roach well and truly be lethal at that point. We would have been, I think, at least 2 damage over, which is quite comfortable, but an exact lethal nonetheless, and not a bad game overall. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Roach decks and stuff aren't usually the decks I tend to play the most, just because I don't really enjoy playing them as much, and I'm sure you guys could tell, you know, the misplays and different things that I do sometimes work out, sometimes don't, and there are definitely better lines of play to go for if you are a more experienced Forest player, but I still want to be able to cover all these sort of decks for you, even if they aren't perfect, just to give you an idea on how stuff is going, and especially with stuff like Grand Prix, covering the decks that topped for each class, or at least had a hand in getting at least 5 wins in that Group A is kind of important, and I want to bring that to you guys so you don't miss out on everything. So if you did enjoy the video, hit the like button and subscribe. You can find more videos on my channel. There should even be a playlist for all the Grand Prix videos that, or I'll include them in my standard unlimited formats. And be sure to check out the deck list in the description below. Catch you next time. Bye.